Men's and women's basketball get huge wins over Shawnee State. Point Park Cross Country earns their first team national championship. The Steelers and Penguins continue to crumble. The NFL inches closer to playoffs, while the NBA in-season tournament gets ready to crown its first ever champion. And was the College Football Committee right in their final 4 decisions? It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Pioneer Sideline. I'm your host, Natalia Hillen. This past Saturday, the Point Park men's basketball team played their second conference game of the season against Shawnee State and got the win 83-80. In the first half, the Pioneers were leading early, 11-4. Their first 9 points were all on trays. PPU had a 9 for 15 performance from the three-point range. Joe Valerie made 9 of 10 goals in the first 20 minutes, which also included a perfect 4 for 4 from long range. Stamps and Smith were 2 for 4, and Point Park shot 51% in the first half, with SSU getting 40% in shots. Point Park dominated rebounds 28-15. The Pioneers had a 20-point lead at the half, with the score sitting at 53-33. A big scorer was Joe Valerie with 22 points. However, things switched up a bit in the second half. Shawnee State came back, rebounding its way to a 40-40 draw and shot 54% in the second, while Point Park shot 41%. The clock had 10:42 left and the score was 63-55. Smith got a couple of big baskets to regain that control, 79-71 with 4 minutes left in the game. At 1:35 mark, Valerie scored off a foul, which was the last few points. The top scorers of the game were Joe Valerie with 32 points, which was one off of his career high. Jameson Smith with 16 points, Jalen Stamps with 14 and 8 assists, and Nate Van with 8 points. Also, congratulations to Joe Valerie on being selected as the NAIA Player of the Week. The Pioneers are 9-0 on the season and 2-0 in the River States Conference. Switching gears over to the Point Park University women's basketball team, as they also had an RSC matchup against Shawnee State. The Pioneers got the win 92-78. It was a huge game for Jillian Piccolino as she got a career high of 31 points, leading the Pioneers. She was 9 for 17 from the field, 3 for 6 from long range, and 10 for 12 at the foul line. Other key scorers were Gabby Legister, who put up 14 points and got 12 rebounds. Alexis Giles with 18 points and had an 8 for 9 performance on free throws. She was almost one off of her career high. Ari Blada scored 11 points, had 7 rebounds and 4 assists, and Emma Pavlik with 10 points, 3 assists, and 4 for 5 from the floor. 10 minutes into the first quarter, PPU had a big offensive output, leading 27-21, and by the half, Point Park was up 48-37, with Piccolino scoring 19 points. After 3 quarters, Shawnee got within 68-60, but Point Park had an 11-4 run starting the fourth quarter, with the final score ending 92-78. Point Park led in rebounds 45-38, with both teams having 16 turnovers. Both the men's and women's teams have their next RSC matchup this Saturday, December 9th, against Alice Lloyd at home. The tip-off is at 1 p.m. for the women and 3 p.m. for the men. Good luck to both teams. Now I'll be sending things over to Anna Eisman to recap our national championship winners and the YSU Icebreaker meet. Anna?
Thanks, Nat. 4 Point Park men made school history this weekend, winning their first ever NAIA national championship. On Sunday, December 3rd, 4 members of the men's track and field and cross country team combined to win the NAIA Men's Marathon National Championship. For the first time, the NAIA offered student athletes a chance to compete in the whole 26.2-mile marathon as a standalone event, which took place in Sacramento, California. John Dyer, Joshua Goslin, Yannick Windelbin, and Gabe Ebersole created history as the first ever winners in the event for the program and for the NAIA. 54 out of the 65 participants completed the 26.2 miles, and each school could contribute to a team score of at least 3 of the 4 runners completed all 26.2 miles. The national championship was won by the Pioneers in a close contest that required a tiebreaker, and the difference came from Point Park, which had 2 runners in before Campbellsville, Kentucky's second finisher. John Dyer, a junior from Denham, Louisiana, led the Pioneers with a 2-hour and 35-minute finish. That amounted to a 26.2 mile at a pace of 5:56 per mile. Joshua Goslin finished in 15th place with a time of 2 hours and 38 minutes, and Yannick Windelbin came in at 2 hours and 47 minutes, while Gabe Ebersol completed just over 18 miles at a pace of 6:14. Congratulations to the coaches and those all who competed in this incredible milestone. In other news, the men's and women's track and field team opened up their indoor season at Youngstown, Ohio in their annual icebreaker meet. The Pioneers had 4 NAI national qualifiers and set 6 new school records at the meet. Point Park secured the top spot in the weight throw thanks to sophomore Siobhan Fletcher and his national qualifying performance. He cleared the national A standard with a throw of 19.65 meters, also breaking his own school record from last season. Senior Collins Easy also qualified for the NAI National Championship with his triple jump mark of 14.48 meters. This also cleared the A standard mark and put him in second place overall at the NCAA Division I meet. Akeem Mustafa, a freshman jumper from Harrisburg, PA, also had a national qualifying mark in the long jump, finishing the day with a mark of 7.03 meters to hit the NAI B standard. Emma Romer, a freshman from Hamburg, Germany, qualified for nationals on the women's side with a mark of 5.52 meters in the long jump, putting her at 6th place overall for the day. The Pioneers had a handful of new school records that included 2 from freshman Kanye Mills in the 60-meter hurdles and 400-meter dash. His 400 time of 49.82 made him just the second runner in school history to ever run a sub-50 400-meter race. Another school record fell when Diamond Rush in the 200-meter dash. The junior from Detroit, Michigan, and transfer from Tennessee Tech ran a time of 25.83 for the best in school history and a 16th place finish overall. Congratulations to the national qualifiers and new school record holders. The Pioneers will head to Indiana Tech the week of December 3rd to compete in their last competition before Christmas break. Good luck to all competing, and back to you at the desk, Nat.
Thanks, Anna. After the break, we're back with all things locally and nationally. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Now I'll be sending things over to Nick Shermito for all things locally. Nick?
Thanks, Nat. The Penguins have struggled in the past week to find victories, taking 3 of their last 4 games past regulation, but falling short. Starting last Tuesday against the Nashville Predators, the Pens were down early 2-0 off of 2 goals scored by forward Michael McCarron. However, the Pens managed to fight back with a second-period goal by Evgeny Malkin and a third-period goal by Brian Rust to tie the game up at 2-2. However, The Preds would take the win in overtime after the refs missed a clear interference, and Philip Forsberg went in alone for the game winner. Next up for the Pens were the Tampa Bay Lightning on Thursday. After once again being down 2-0 after the first period, the Pens clawed their way back again in the second, starting with Sidney Crosby scoring his 14th of the season and ending with Drew O'Connor scoring his second. In the third period, Jeff Carter scored his first of the year to give the Pens a 3-2 lead. Then Tristan Jarry scored the first goalie goal in Penguins history to give the Pens the 4-2 lead and the win. The following Saturday, the Pens hosted the Philadelphia Flyers in the next installment of the Battle of Pennsylvania. The scoring didn't get started until the second period, when Chris Letang netted home his second of the season to make it 1-0 Pens. Minutes later, Owen Tippett would tie the game up with his 8th of the year in the third. In the third, Jake Getzel would score his 8th of the year to give the Pens the 2-1 lead. Then later, Scott Laughton would tie the game up at 2-2 off of his second goal of the year. Minutes later, Flyers rookie Tyson Forrester would give the Flyers a 3-2 lead off his 4th of the year. The Flyers looked to have this game in the bag until Jake Getzel scored his second of the game with 21 seconds left to force overtime. The game went all the way to the shootout, where Sean Couturier scored the lone goal of the shootout, to win for the Flyers. Last night, it was Pens Flyers Part 2, this time in Philly. In the first period, it was Sidney Crosby getting his 15th of the season to give the Pens the 1-0 lead. In the second period, Tyson Forrester tied the game for the Flyers off his 5th of the year. The game would once again see extra time, as the Pens played their third overtime game in their last 4 games. In overtime, however, Sean Couturier again scored the game-winning goal, as his 6th of the season would give the Flyers the 2-1 win. The Pens' record is now currently 11-10-3, and they look to start getting momentum back in the Eastern Conference playoff race by getting a win over the Tampa Bay Lightning once again tomorrow night. Switching gears to baseball now, former Buccos manager Jim Leyland was voted into the Baseball Hall of Fame this past weekend. Leyland won 851 games as a Pirates manager from 1986 to 1992 and guided the team to 3 straight NL East pennants. He also managed the Florida Marlins, Colorado Rockies, and Detroit Tigers. He won a championship in 1997 with the Marlins and took the Tigers all the way to the championship in 2006 and 2012, but would lose both times. With that in mind, let's hear from Steelers fan 7 himself, John Mayer, as he recaps the Steelers' recent game against the Cardinals. John?
Thanks, Nick. This past Sunday in Pittsburgh, the Steelers were handed a shocking loss as they fell to the now 3-10 Arizona Cardinals in a game where starting quarterback Kenny Pickett had to leave early due to an ankle injury. Former Steelers Pro Bowl running back James Conner was the star of the game as he dominated his return to Pittsburgh with 105 yards on the ground along with 2 touchdowns. The Steelers' offense, on the other hand, couldn't get much going against the Cardinals' defense, as the only touchdown of the day came late in the game on a Mitch Trubisky touchdown pass to Deontay Johnson, with a controversial celebration that followed while the team was still trailing 24-10 late in the fourth quarter. Kenny Pickett wasn't the only Steeler to go down with an injury versus Arizona, as linebacker Elandon Roberts and guard Isaac Seumalo also left the game with injuries, while All-Pro safety Minkah Fitzpatrick played through a broken hand. Next up for the Steelers is another 2-10 team, and one they cannot take lightly after last week's stunning loss, and Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots under the lights in Pittsburgh on Thursday Night Football. The Steelers will be wearing their color rush jerseys for the first time this season, and Mitch Trubisky will get the primetime start as Kenny Pickett recovers from the ankle injury he suffered during last week's loss to the Cardinals.
Thank you for that, John. Now, I have a few questions in regards to the team's recent performance and a look into the future. How do you think Eddie and Mike are doing so far, taking over for Matt Canada? Do you think that they were the right replacement?
I mean, for now, who else are you going to replace him with? So I like that they have the little collaboration thing going. They're getting multiple mindsets in there. They did great the first game. Even though they only put up 16 points, they snapped that historic 400-yard streak. They finally got over 400 yards. Kenny had 278 passing, a season high. Freiermuth was used like never before, putting up over 100 yards. And they were looking really good in the beginning of the Cardinals game until Kenny Pickett went down with that injury. We saw some Pickett to Pickens deep shots. The running game was running strong. But when Kenny went down, the offense just wasn't the same.
And they're so used to obviously practicing with Kenny. And now that he's hurt in these next 2 weeks, how do you think the Steelers will do in their next game and remaining games?
Well, right now, Mitch Trubisky has to focus on not turning the football over. Turning the football over will lose this team games. They have to focus on not turning it over and getting that run game going with Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. The Patriots should be an easy win, but after last week, we saw how that went. They cannot take any teams lightly. This Patriots game is a must-win game. With a playoff team, we got to go to Indianapolis. That's going to be a tough game, and it's probably going to be either Trubisky or Rudolph starting that one. So that's going to be a tough one. The Bengals didn't look like any slouches, beating the former number 1 seed Jaguars on Monday Night Football the other night. So the rest of these games, even though the Steelers are sitting at 7-5 with a great defense, they have a lot of injuries with Isaac Seumalo going down with the shoulder, Landon Roberts, who's one of the most valuable players on the team right now regarding their linebacker situation with Quan and Holcomb going down. So there's a lot of injuries besides Kenny Pickett. And the team is just going to have to band together. And Seattle and Baltimore, those last 2 weeks, that Baltimore game could be huge. It could come down to everything. It could come down to a playoff spot. It could come down to the AFC North. Hopefully Pickett is back by then. They're saying like 2 to 4 weeks, so he's estimated to be. But right now, the main thing, just don't turn the football over, get that running game going, and have a defensive bounce back.
Yeah, I think that if they really want it, they're going to have to work together. Obviously, like Trubisky is going to have to really just try his best to not botch anything. So we'll have to see with that. We're going to speak about the defense right now. With 14 sacks through 12 games, is TJ Watt on his way to a second DPOY award?
I really think so. He's second in the NFL in sacks right now, only one behind Khalil Mack with 15. He's got 3 forced fumbles, a couple of recoveries, a touchdown, a pick. TJ Watt is a playmaker. Without TJ Watt, we saw last year how that goes. He's one of the most valuable players in the whole league. And TJ Watt, I believe, is on the way to his second Defensive Player of the Year award.
One of my favorite things to watch, like when I'm watching the game, is seeing him sack. It's just like incredible. The energy's there. It's just like really fun to see that.
No, me too.
With the state of the AFC right now, do you think the Steelers can still realistically make a playoff run?
I do. The AFC is weak right now. Patrick Mahomes, the Chiefs, they did not look great losing to Green Bay. We know how the Steelers do against the Ravens. T-Law's status is now in question after suffering an injury last night against the Bengals. And right now, the AFC is wide open. And I believe the Steelers, if they could get healthy, get back to playing the football that they were playing earlier in the season, I believe they can make a run. I'm not saying Super Bowl or anything crazy like that, but I could definitely see them getting a playoff win or 2 if the cards fall in their favor.
Well, thanks, John. Anything can happen, so we're going to have to see. Thursday Night Football is back for the Steelers, Week 14 against the Patriots with kickoff at 8:15 at Acrisure Stadium. I'm really excited to see what is going to happen. That's all for Steelers news this week. Make sure to follow @SteelersFan7 to stay regularly updated on all things Steelers throughout the back end of the season. Now let's hear from Matt Palangi about the rest of the sports world. Matt?
Thanks, Nat. The NFL season is getting into the late stages, and it's crunch time for these teams. Week 13 started off with a Thursday night shootout between the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys would not force a single punt, but still managed to win 41-35, with Dak Prescott still continuing his MVP season. Going on to Sunday, we got an absolute masterclass of offense on display, with the Chargers beating the Patriots with a whopping final score of 6-0. That would be the Patriots' third straight loss, where they did not allow 10 points, yet still come up short. The Colts beat the Titans to remain in the playoff race. The NFC South remains a toss-up as both the Falcons and Buccaneers won this past week. In the 4 o'clock stretch of games, we got the NFC Championship rematch of the Eagles and the Niners, where the healthy 49ers dominated all game, and these weapons continue to remain a threat for San Francisco. The Chiefs on primetime participated in what many are saying is the worst officiated game of all time, with the Chiefs losing 19-27. Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce in a post-game interview said this quote, "They shouldn't even be allowed to wear a striped shirt. Shouldn't even be allowed to work at Foot Locker," end quote, expressing his opinion on the game. The Monday night game was entertaining, with Bengals rookie backup Jake Browning completing 32 of his 37 passes for 354 yards. Unfortunately, Jaguars franchise quarterback Trevor Lawrence went down with an ankle injury, very upsetting injury that is, hoping for a good speedy recovery. In college football news, the Final Four is set. Michigan gets the 1 seed, Washington will get the 2 spot, followed by the Texas Longhorns at 3 and Alabama at 4. With speculation around this Final Four, we will be discussing this later on Case of the Week. The Heisman finalists were announced as well, with quarterbacks Michael Penix Jr. for Washington, Jaden Daniels for LSU, Oregon's Bo Nix to round out the quarterbacks, and a wide receiver from The Ohio State University, Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's continue to watch and see who will win the gold and the Heisman. Now on to NHL standings and news. The Boston Bruins are here to be an unstoppable regular season force again with their 17-4 record. In the Metro, the Rangers are also unreal to start the year at 18-4. The West is more competitive as 2022 champs the Colorado Avalanche barely are on top of the Central, closely followed by the Dallas Stars. In the Pacific, the Golden Knights are again at the top and what is currently the best goalkeeper in the league, Adin Hill. Hill leads the league in goals allowed on average and save percentage. The Canucks closely follow the Knights, who are led by top NHL goal scorer so far this season, Brock Boeser. Tampa's Nikita Kucherov currently leads the NHL in points and is second in goals as a top player this season. Now let's finish off by taking a quick look at the NBA in-season tournament. This tournament is getting more mid-season recognition and a playoff atmosphere. The Pacers upset the Celtics, and the Pelicans beat the Kings. The Lakers will face the Suns, and the Bucks will face the Knicks. Both of those winners will go on to play the previous head-to-head winners of each conference. That's all from me. Back to you at the desk, Nat.
Thanks, Matt. After the break, we discuss if the College Football Committee made the right decision. Stay tuned.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Daybreak.
We are still somehow hanging around in the playoff.
It gives Georgia Democrats some hold onto the governing body.
There are 200,000 people still in harm's way. This weather is perfect for those cozy nights indoors.
Welcome back to Case of the Week. This week, I'm joined by Matt, Ryan, and Gabe, and we're here to discuss who the College Football Committees chose for the Final Four for the College Football Playoffs. Were they right or were they wrong? All right, so we got Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. Florida State at 5, kind of debatable there. But Michigan will be facing Alabama in the Rose Bowl game, and Washington will be playing Texas in the All-State Sugar Bowl. So I'm going to start with Matt. What do you think of the top 4?
Okay, so I feel like the most speculation is on Florida State. I think they earned a spot, but the problem is when you look at college football playoffs, it's literally just a free win for Michigan if they make the 4 spot because they don't have their QB right now. And with the way that they pick, you gotta kind of look like that's like imagine if the Chiefs go to the playoffs and then lose Mahomes. You obviously expect them to lose. That's how I feel right now. It's just like I don't think Florida State is good enough without Jordan Travis to make a run, and I think they did it right by not putting them there. I like Bama at 4. They just beat Georgia, who hasn't lost in 2 years. That was a really huge game for them. They secured a spot there. And Texas, I honestly think, they went under the radar a lot this year. A lot of people weren't giving them the hype that they deserve. They're a really, really good football team. And really do think that they deserve to be there. And then Michigan and Washington undefeated seasons. Washington with the best offense in the country. Michigan just dominating, beating OSU and beating Penn State were two huge wins for them. And I definitely think that the top 4 is right, at least in my opinion.
Okay. Brian?
So I disagree. I don't like the top 4. I like the top 3. I just don't like the 4th spot. I still feel like Alabama's offense is ranked lower than Florida State's. Their defense is ranked lower than Florida State. Then Florida State's, again, you can't judge a team off of one player. I mean, yes, it is their starting quarterback. He has been their offense the entire year. But again, their defense is solid. Their running game is solid, which is an overlooked part of Florida State's offense. I still feel like Florida State could have had a chance against Michigan to at least pull some sort of a playoff run.
Gabe?
I believe that Florida State, it's hard to put a team in the playoffs when they lose their whole identity as an offense because Jordan Travis goes out. They bring in Louisville. They're struggling against Louisville. They can barely get a first down in the first half. Their quarterback who came in started 1 for 9 for 8 yards, and that was through their first 3 drives. That type of quarterback play you cannot have in a national championship game, especially going against a team like Michigan. That type of defense, nothing's going to get done. You're going to have a TCU versus Georgia type game from last year's playoffs if you have that, in my opinion. So, and also the other teams, I would say Texas. Also, I like them a lot. I think they will beat Washington. I think they're a better team than Washington, even though they lost earlier this year and Washington hasn't. Washington has looked beatable more than Texas has to me. And I think Michigan and Alabama both, that'll be a good game. I think Alabama probably takes that one also because Jalen Milroe, he's gone more comfortable. And you saw Alabama when they were playing, struggling. It was when they didn't have quarterback play earlier this year. He stepped up, and I think that's going to be a difference maker. J.J. McCarthy's regressed throughout the year, and I think the team is hot as Alabama, so they'll take that.
So real quick, I want you guys to put yourself in the position of if you were on Florida State's team and you were undefeated and you didn't make it in the top 4. Like, how would you feel? How would you take that in?
You would feel slighted, but if you look at their resume, like the ACC this year, UNC was the top team in the ACC. They underwhelmed. Clemson was the only other ranked team going into the year other than Florida State and UNC, and they finished unranked. They have I believe 6 losses already. Like the ACC has been underwhelming. Yes, it's a Power 5 conference, but this year it's been severely lacking. So even though Florida State came out on top, even Louisville's looked beatable. Pitt's been very very underwhelming this year. So it's it's a Power 5 conference championship and undefeated season, but it's not like something you would see. Like it's not like an SEC bid. I could see a one-loss SEC bid. I kind of want
But the thing about the SEC is that the SEC is below 500 against any other Power 5 conference this year. The ACC is above 500, so even though they've looked underwhelming, they still beat the other conferences. So I still feel like the ACC bid should be not higher, but equal to the SEC, even though it is the SEC. You can't go win the playoffs against your own conference. I mean, you got to beat the other conferences, and with the SEC being below the 500 mark, you can't really argue about the conferences.
I mean, but you look at these top teams. You're looking at Alabama play Texas. Those are 2 of the top 3. Those are the 2 top teams that are both in the playoffs, and they play against each other. You get a phenomenal game out of that, and that's Alabama's only loss of the year. So going into that game, they're lost to a top 3 team. I don't think it's a great argument that they can't get in based on that. When you look at Florida State's beat up on, who's their best win this year?
LSU, ranked 15 at LSU.
And Alabama also beat them by 14.
Honestly, I kind of want to just hop off of you guys real quick. I kind of more agree with Gabe only because Florida State's passing offense was higher than Bama, but there's no way that happens if
it doesn't get
Travis is
replicated.
hurt.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But that's
Which is fair.
Yeah.
It wasn't just passing offense I mentioned. It was all total offense.
Yeah, no, their rushing offense saved them versus Louisville, though.
If you want to argue based on whole season, I think you could argue that Florida State deserves a 4 seed. But if you are trying to make the best games possible, I don't think there's even an argument that Florida State should be in the
And
top
that's
4.
just the baseline right there. Is best games, Florida State has to not be
Michigan would be favored by 22 points if they played, whereas against Alabama, it could even
And
go
also
either way.
to add on to that, Michigan's pass offense gave up the most passing yards out of all the teams this year. And their biggest threat to Michigan's defense is the passing game. The passing game's non-existent without almost non-existent without Jordan Travis. So I just think Michigan's the biggest thing you need to do is beat Michigan is pass through them, and you're not going to be able to without Jordan Travis there. I think for this sake, if I'm Michigan, I'm really upset right now because I genuinely believe we're going to lose. But
all right, well, who do we think is going to take it all home at the end?
I have Texas winning. How much evidence do I have is I could keep talking for how I feel about their run game. Their run game's consistent pairing with their offense, averaging over 30 points per game. But It's more just a gut feeling. Like, if I'm being honest, I think Washington, I like what Gabe said earlier about how Washington has looked more beatable than Texas this year. I completely agree. Other than the game Texas lost, I think Texas has really came out. I honestly think Texas is a better overall team than Michigan, too, but they don't play against each other. But I think Texas will win.
Ryan?
So I actually have Washington because I have to tell you what, even though their defense is not good, I still think their offense can outscore anybody in the top 4 right now.
Okay, Gabe?
I mean, I've seen them put up 15 points on ASU, but I'm going to have to go with Texas. I think that Alabama's the best team, but they have to go through Michigan in the first round, whereas I see Washington as an easier matchup, so I think they have the best chance.
Well, we're going to have to see what is going to go down. Thank you, guys. And with all that speculation, that's all the time that we have this week. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer sideline.